Today's top stories at NBR. NZX-listed refrigeration technology supplier Wellington Drive Technologies upgrades its expectations. Air New Zealand announces directors Rob Jager and Linda Jenkinson will retire from the National Carriers Board. South expects the first stage of its cultivation joint venture to bring in $8 million a year. And there's more, coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR Today, a wrap of the day's top business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz. It's Monday, June 28th. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks so much for joining us. Rocket Lab founder and CEO Peter Beck stands to hold 13.1% of voting rights in the New Zealand-founded but US-registered space company once it lists on the NASDAQ, expected later this year. An updated SEC registration document filed by Vector Capital's special purpose acquisition company, Vector Acquisition Corp, noted that Beck would hold the stake if all existing shareholders exercise their redemption rights to sell their shares to the company at IPO. Assuming no redemption rights are exercised at that point, Beck would hold a voting stake of 12.2%. Either way, Beck's holding of more than 54.5 million shares would not change and is expected to be worth $771.2 million New Zealand dollars based on an implied Vector share price used in the IPO documents of US $10. Auckland's plush Sofitel Viaduct Harbour Hotel may be split into two and run by separate operators as a battle between two sets of owners plays out in court. On one side is the wealthy Pandy family, managers of hotels across Australasia and Fiji, which owns 84 of the newly renovated property's 191 rooms and most of its common areas. On the other is a group of overseas investors who own 85 rooms and have refused to make their units available to the Pandy-controlled Sofitel branded operator. The dispute is headed for a full trial, and in the meantime, the High Court in Auckland has ruled the overseas owners can't be prevented from renting their shuttered rooms out to another accommodation provider. So the owners have lined up the Marsden Group, local operator of the Ramada brand, to operate the independently owned units. NZX-listed refrigeration technology supplier Wellington Drive Technologies has upgraded its expectations around revenue and profit in the current financial year. The company had already alerted the market of a record revenue year as sales of its two key products, Connect IoT solution and ECR2 motor series, surged, although increased costs also applied. Wellington Drive said positive headwinds meant it was now forecasting revenue in the range of US $45 to $50 million, up from the previous range of US $41 to $46 million. Air New Zealand has announced directors Rob Jager and Linda Jenkinson will retire from the National Carriers Board at the next annual meeting, due to be held in the last quarter of the 2021 calendar year. Jager served the airline for 3 terms and therefore would not seek re-election at this year's meeting, the chair, Dame Therese Walsh, said. Jenkinson has been a director for almost 3 terms and had already indicated 2021 could be her last year of service due to increasing professional commitments in New Zealand and overseas. NZX-listed South has told investors at its annual meeting that the company expects the first stage of its cultivation joint venture to bring in $8 million a year. The hybrid online in-person meeting was held at the Link Market Services office in Auckland. Chair Tony Ho appeared from Australia through a video link, unable to attend because of the Trans-Tasman bubble closure, while now former independent director Connor English was absent from his final meeting for the company, presumably due to the Wellington COVID-19 restrictions. Addressing the meeting, Chief Executive Mark Lucas said the first phase of South's Waikato-based cultivation facility had capacity to produce between 1,500 and 1,800 kilograms of medical-grade cannabis flower, with wholesale pricing estimates between $3,500 and $10,000 for a kilogram. Two of the country's largest insurers are tight-lipped on speculation they have bid for Westpac's New Zealand life insurance business. The Australian reported that Westpac was close to selling its Australian and New Zealand life insurance units, following a process which began last year. The report said the New Zealand sale was being managed by JP Morgan and had reached its final stages, with the deal possibly worth as much as $500 million. Local insurers, Fidelity Life and Partners Life, were both linked to the Westpac New Zealand life insurance sale. Each refused to to comment on the speculation to NBR. However, a local Westpac spokesperson also returned a no comment. The full details of those stories are at nbr.co.nz right now. Tomorrow at NBR, in Margin Call, Ashley Gardine teases out the life cycle of financial market bubbles, while CERT NZ releases the results of a two-part survey of SMEs on what they're doing about cyber security threats. I'm Paul Brennan. I look forward to being with you again tomorrow around lunchtime for the morning's NBR trending stories. Then same time, same place, right here from 5:30 tomorrow for another NBR Today.